Great. Today, we are pleased to welcome Mr. Joao Ventura, who is joining us remotely from the Azores. Mr. Ventura has been involved in Azorean genealogy for more than 25 years. He currently serves as the archivist for the Secretary of Public Works on Terceira Island. Joao played a key role in scanning church records for Terceira, São Jorge, and Graciosa, and he oversaw the digitization of records from Faial, Pico, Corvo, and Flores. In today's presentation, Mr. Ventura will present a program on naming practices in the Azores. He will explore how given names are shaped by a variety of influences, including religious, political, and cultural factors. There will be time for questions at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please post your question using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we will read the questions to Mr. Ventura after his program is concluded, and he will answer them live on the program. Please note there is not a handout for this program. However, Mr. Ventura has generously agreed that the presentation can be recorded, and it will soon be posted on the Santa Cruz Public Library's YouTube channel, where you may watch it again. Please join me in giving Joao Ventura a warm Zoom welcome. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Ventura.
Thank you for having me, and hello everyone. I'm not saying good morning, good afternoon, good night, because people can be watching from all over the world. So today I'm trying to explain how family names exist in Portugal. I'm going to start with today. Now we can have a child is born, then it's recorded at the hospital using the mother's family name and the father's family name. They can have one given name or two given names, and they can have two family names from the father, from the mother, and two from the father. Usually the father's family names, they are the last one from the name. For example, Maria Alves from the mother, Cardoso from the father. So this rule exists since the 1930s. Before that, there was no rule for family names to exist. So you know that there's one from the father, one from the mother, but you can pick also one from the grandparent, either on the mother or the father side. No more from other generations, just the parents and grandparents. That's it. Before the 1930s, they had to record the name at birth. Those that have been doing genealogy research in Portugal, they know that there was a change from the church records in 1911 to the civil registry. When the civil registry began on April the 1st, 1911, children had to be recorded by their full names. In the beginning, these confused people. So most women didn't have a family name. In the early ages, in the early years of after 1911, we have tens, or I would say tens, of Maria da Conceição, Maria de Jesus, Maria Cândida, and no family name. So when someone is trying to find an ancestor in those records, it's very hard to find them because the names are very, very short without family names. I know a case, it was just Francisco José from 1917. It's a very, very common family, not family name, I wouldn't say that. It's a full name. But he passed the family names to the children that he inherited from his parents. So he didn't have them, but he passed to the children. So Before 1911, as you all know, or if you are doing genealogy research, children are recorded by their given names. Maria, daughter of so and so. So when they became older, they used the full name. A couple may have had 6, 7 Marias. It would be Maria de Jesus, usually the oldest. Then there was Maria da Conceição, the second oldest. And then the others would be Maria something. To make it more confused, people usually name them by their middle name. So Maria da Conceição would be called Conceição. Maria de Jesus would be called Jesus. Maria Cândida would be Cândida. And most people didn't even know that they were Maria something. They just thought that they were the middle name was the first name. So this confuses a lot when doing genealogy research. Also, the family names before 1911, as I've said, they were not recorded at birth, so there was an option to use one or the other. Sometimes men, they are known by multiple names, José Gonçalves Miranda or José Fernandes Miranda. And those coexist. One child is Fernandes, the other child is Gonçalves, and both are correct. Of course, we have to be aware that sometimes children, couples exist in the same time period, in the same village, and they have the same family names. For example, in Terceira and São Sebastião, the village, there was two João Machado Carvalho, and they were married to Maria Cândida, two different couples with the same family name, with the same names that coexisted. And when doing a research, we have to follow all the leads. Where does these family names come from? The origin of the family names is diverse. Usually it comes from the father, but sometimes from the maternal grandfather, sometimes from a godparent, a godfather, or a very ancient ancestor. Sometimes it's very hard to understand the origin of a family name. Give you one example. When someone from one island moves to another island, for example, from St. George Island to Terceira, and he uses the name Silveira, is not common on Terceira Island, specifically in that village that he moved to. And the children didn't use the name Silveira, but used the family names of the maternal grandfather. And the idea was to mingle in the village. Using Silveira as the family name would make them like not like strange in the village. They didn't belong to the families of the village. And why I say this, belonging to the family of the village? Because some families have lived in the same village for centuries. From the early documents, sometimes in the 1500s, that family name exists in that village, and it goes all the way to the 21st century. In the 1800s, belonging to that family meant that that person belonged to the village and didn't come from another place. So if they use the name Silveira, it would be a different, like someone, like a foreigner living in the village. And for this reason, many of you know that when people moved from Portugal to the United States or Canada, but more in the United States or Australia and New Zealand, they changed their names. The family names that existed in Portugal, they adapted the names to the English language, either by literal translation. For example, wedge came from cunha, which is a literal translation, or just similar sound. For example, Rodrigues became Roderick or Rogers. And the list is, I wouldn't say endless, but the list is very long. So people change the names to mingle in. And this existed also here in the Azores and even in Portugal. Sometimes when people move from one island to the other, or from one archipelago to the other, or from the mainland to the Azores or Madeira, they also do it. I've heard a story. I'm going to give you an example. There was this lady, her family name was Madeira because the ancestor came from Madeira Island to Terceira. So it was Manuel Madeira, Manuel that came from Madeira, and Madeira became the family name. In the original name in Madeira was de Ornelas de Vasconcelos, a very fancy name. And she wanted to change her name to de Ornelas de Vasconcelos because it sounded more fancy to her than Madeira. This is just an example how names can change. I always tell people, just follow the documents. Read the information in the documents and compare with varieties that may exist in the similar records, or try to find siblings of that individual to find the right person. In São Miguel Island, people don't have long family names. It can be José da Costa or José Borges. And in the same village, the same time period, you can have a lot of men with that name. And most women were Maria, having José da Costa and Maria de Jesus was common. You can have 2, 3, or 4. What they did was to find a nickname to tell the difference from one and the other. You can have usually I've found names of fishes, like the bezugo, which is a fish, José da Costa bezugo. For some reason, they gave the name of the fish to that person as a nickname. Those nicknames may last for 1 or 2 generations, and then they disappear. Some last longer. The problem is when we change from the church records to the civil registry. If those nicknames go with the person, they stay there. They don't go back to the original family name. In the time of the church records, people, they had the idea of the family, and they chose to use those nicknames for 1 or 2 generations, but then they would go back to the original family name. And then I'll show you some examples of that. So those nicknames, they were not part of the name. They were just used to tell the difference one person from the other. Sometimes the family names come from first names, and this happens in St. George a lot, which is Caetano Silveira. The sons would be for example, João, Silveira, Caetano. So people would know that those individuals, they were the descendants of Caetano Silveira. So, and this happens a lot in St. George Island. One unusual given name becomes the family name to identify those, like I would say a clan. It's not a clan, it's a group of people that descend from one individual, because Silveira is a very common name in St. George Island. So to tell the difference, one group from the other, they are the Caetanos and not all together. And this happens the same thing with women. For example, a very common family name in 2 or 3 villages on Terceira is Gonçalves Leonardo. Gonçalves Leonardo at some point became a very common family name on Terceira Island in some villages. To tell the difference, one family from the other, they use the nicknames. They use the batata, which is potato. There was the fralda, which is diaper. Usually that guy would use the shirt outside the trousers. We call it fralda. And there was one Margarida. And Margarida, and I'm explaining this one because the António Gonçalves Leonardo married to Margarida Antonia. She became a widow young. They had two sons, and she became a widow in her 30s, and she didn't remarry. So her children and grandchildren became Gonçalves Leonardo Margarida. So they would know that those were the descendants of Margarida. And interesting is that tracing the family till today, one branch continued using Margarida and the other uses Gonçalves. This takes us to another level, which is before 1911, in many villages, we have a family name. It's a junction of 2 family names. As I was saying, Gonçalves, Leonardo. Gonçalves and Leonardo, they go together. We have other families that are Machado, Leonardo. They are not related. Actually, Leonardo is a given name that at some point is used as a family name. I don't know the origin so far of the first family. I know the first families that used Leonardo, but sometimes we cannot connect to settlers. There was a settling family, Gonçalves Leonardo, but most of the Leonardos I'm able to find in the research, they don't connect to the settling families. There's, I would say, 2 generations missing. Church records, they exist for a certain period of time, and when they don't exist, the research stops there. So the Gonçalves Leonardo is a family name, but in common knowledge, people would call them Francisco Gonçalves, for example. They know he's Leonardo, but they only say Francisco Gonçalves. That's why one branch of the family uses Leon Gonçalves as the family name, and the other continued to use Margarida. You may ask, well, what about the children that are abandoned at birth, exposed, in Portuguese, exposto? Those children that were abandoned, where they pick the family names from? They can either pick from the family that raised them, or the godparent, the godfather, or sometimes I would say they knew who were the parents or the father. They knew, but there was never a document saying that person acknowledges this child or this son has his own son. There's no document, but common knowledge, they knew who was the father. And he uses the names, the family names of the father. Sometimes they are very unusual family names, and there's no doubt that that person belongs to that family. DNA can help solving those mysteries, but that's not my area of expertise. And sometimes, although people didn't know how to read and write, but they were aware of the family names. They knew the importance of a family name. Sometimes the family name is not used for 2 or 3 generations, but they go back and pick those family names. That may have an explanation in wills. There was a will from the 1550s, a very rich lady on Terceira. Her husband died. He had made a will. She died with a will. The will is huge, and in one, she leaves properties as a permanent heirloom to the descendants. The people that can use those lands or cultivate those lands or benefit from the lands, they have to use family names that she prescribed. The husband was Guilherme Muniz, and the wife, the lady that made the will, she was Dona Joana Corte Real. And she said, I'll leave the lands to this person and then the descendants. At some point, if there's no more descendants, you have to go back in the family tree and pick people that are, they have the right to inherit those properties with one condition. Males would have to use the family name Muniz. Females would have to use the family name Corte Real. So many people, knowing this rule, change their family names, hoping that someday they would inherit the properties. Because if there was a time, 200 years later, let's say, there was no one in the direct line that can or could benefit from the land, inherit the land, they would go back to the family tree to see who was entitled to benefit. If he was a man and he was not Muniz, he wouldn't inherit that land. If it was a lady, if she was not Corte Real, she wouldn't get the land. This is an explanation why sometimes people use very different family names. And most times we don't have access to this information. I was fortunate to find the will and study the will, and it gave me a different perspective. For example, I have an ancestor. He uses the family name Diniz, and he picked that family name from a great grandfather. So there were 3 female lines, and he used the family name from a great grandfather. So sometimes it's very hard for us to understand how names change from one person to the other. Also, children, not all the children had the same family names. let's say in the 1960s, 1950s, a couple could have 5, 6, 7 children, and they would have different family names. One from the father, one from the mother. Like when I'm saying family names, it's the last family name. For example, I'm Ventura. All my siblings are Ventura, but one of them could be Dinesh from my mother. And for no reason, it's accepted. And we understand this. I know that for foreigners or people doing research that were born in other countries, do research in Portugal, is very hard to understand this rule because there is no rule. There's a sense of family, there's a sense of cluster. We belong to the same family. Of course, going back to São Miguel, and we have the Botelho family. Botelho family is a noble family, very important in São Miguel Island, but not all the individuals that use the family name Botelho are from the original family, or if they are, at some point, we don't have enough documents to make the connections. So that's why finding the documents is very important. There's one family name in San Miguel, is very peculiar, which is Camara. In English, you would say Camara, Camara, because they were exposed, they were abandoned, and the nursing mothers received a subsidy or pension from the city hall, in Portuguese, Câmara. So they used Câmara as their family name. Manuel da Câmara, Manuel of the city hall, because the city hall was the institution that sponsored his upbringing, paid the nursing mothers to provide for them, to make them alive. In Flores, they also use Camara or Camara as the family names. In Terceira, usually they don't. They just pick family names out of nowhere. So, and we have to understand that. And about given names in Terceira, I've seen that a lot. Unusual, very unusual family name, first names, given names, belong to girls that were abandoned at birth. And the priests at the cathedral, they probably they read a lot, and they had different names to give all those girls. When you see a girl with an unusual given name, she was born to unknown parents, and they also referred as daughter of unknown parents or son of unknown parents. They were raised by a family. They lived with that family for sometimes until their adulthood, and but they were never considered children of the couple. Never. They were just abandoned, and they were raised by that family. This sense of existence was very important for the society. They had the opportunity to have a life, I would say a sad life, because they had no, most of the times they had no idea who their parents were. And I want to show you some examples, some of them from my family tree, others from other family trees. So I'm going to share my genealogy database, and then I'll get back to you. Let's see. I hope you're seeing this. This is my maternal grandfather. So
We're not
he's
seeing it yet, Joao.
okay. Are you seeing now?
Not yet. There's a green share button at the bottom of your screen, and then I think you have to hit something.
Okay, yes, I did.
Okay,
Yes,
now
yes,
we're
yes,
going to
yes,
see it
yes.
here in a second.
Okay. Ready now?
Not quite. Yes,
Okay.
now we can see it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, this is my maternal great-grandparents. This is my grandfather, maternal grandfather, Manuel da Silva Borges. So he's the son of José Gonçalves Silva Borges and Maria das Neves. The girls, Maria das Neves Silva, Francisca das Neves, Rosa Neves Silva. But this is the name I wrote here, but usually they would go by Neves, Rosa das Neves. And she passed to her daughters, Neves. The same thing with Maria. So the girls picked the name from the mother, Maria das Neves, the family name. She's not the family name, but they used it as a family name. The boys, we have José Gonçalves Silva, used the original family name. And then my grandfather is Manuel da Silva Borges, Manuel Silva Borges. And then his brother, Francisco Gonçalves Silva Borges, used the father's full family name. Where does this family name come from? Borges. Tracing the ancestry, let me see. Standard. Okay. He's the son of Manuel Gonçalves Silva and Maria do Rosário. And I asked my grandparents why did they use the family name Borges, because the family is Gonçalves Silva up to the 1600s. And I was told because he had a cousin with the same name. And to tell the difference one from the other, he used the Borges from the maternal grandfather, Borges Godinho. So Borges was more important than Godinho. So he picked Borges. He couldn't read or write, but there was something in the names that told them something. And then I can trace back the Gonçalves Silva, so you can see 1638. And then we have this one that died in 1667, Manuel da Silva. This is the oldest I was able to find. And then going back, there's another example, Manuel. Then my maternal grandmother, she's Maria da Esperança Diniz. The brothers were Machado Vitória, as you can see, António Machado Vitória and Francisco Machado Vitória from the father. The daughters were, Faustina was Vitória Diniz, and my grandmother, Maria da Esperança Diniz. So they used Diniz from the mother, their mother. And where does this Diniz come from? Interesting is that my mother, Maria de Fátima Diniz da Silva, she passed down her children, Diniz and not Silva. I'm the only one who is Diniz da Silva. All my siblings, they are only Diniz. And where does this Diniz comes from? Facing back. Maria de Fátima Diniz, Maria da Esperança Diniz, Maria Faustina Diniz. So 3 women, and the family name Diniz was passed from one generation to the other. Faustina, she died in 1964. She's a daughter of António Vaz Diniz. So this is the origin of Diniz. for now. And then Antonio, Antonio, and Manuel. So the family name is Vaz Diniz. Manuel, he was born in 1758. He was the son of João Pacheco de Azevedo, grandfather João Vaz Pacheco, great-grandfather António Fernandes Pacheco Galhardo. Nothing to do with Diniz. We have Manuel Vaz Diniz, is the son of Teresa, who was the daughter of Maria Clara, who was the daughter of Isabel Dias Linhares. And now Isabel was the daughter of Manuel Vaz Diniz. And now this is the origin of Diniz. Three females, and he picked the family name from a great-great-grandfather. Probably for some reason, inheritance or something, he was able to know the ancestor's family name. And then we have Manuel Vaz Diniz, is the son of Inês, who is the daughter of Álvaro Diniz. And Álvaro Diniz, this is the first one. He came to the Azores in the 1500s, late 1400s. And he is the origin, one of the origins of the Diniz. We have 2 or 3 individuals in the early settlement that were Diniz. They owned some land. So there were important people in the village, and having that family name meant something for them. Probably it did. I would say that. Like the family name Fagundes. Fagundes have, in this case, all the children are Diniz Fagundes. Now, I want to show an example of a nickname. Feiticeiro. Manuel da Silva Feiticeiro, he lived in Estrela in Ribeiro Grande, São Miguel Island. He's the first one. Probably he was a wizard or sorcerer, and he got the nickname Feiticeiro. It did something to do with black magic or something like that. He was the son of Antônio da Silva, no more feiticeiros in the village. His son is Manuel da Silva Feiticeiro, and then the nickname disappears. No more nicknames Feiticeiro. If this happened after 1911, I wouldn't be surprised if the family name would be Feiticeiro, because at that time the family name was recorded, and people don't have enough information, family information, to change the family names to the original family name. As you can see, Manuel da Silva is very common, and those that have been doing genealogy research in this village, they know that the number of birds in the village is huge. I would say hundreds a year, which is a lot. And people with the same name, so they use the nickname to tell the difference one from the other. And this is why things change so dramatically, and that's why it's very hard for many people to change to understand the family names. Sometimes the family names come from the origin of the person. I was saying before, the Madeira, that was Ornelas Vasconcelos. She came from Madeira Island to Terceira in this case. So it was Manuel Madeira, Manuel that came from Madeira, like the Porto or Coimbra or Lisboa, people that moved from that region to another place. And well, sometimes they had unusual family names. When I say unusual, I mean they were not typical family names of that village. and it was easier to say Manuel de Lisboa, Manuel from Lisbon, than saying Manuel Fragoso, for example, if Fragoso was not a very common family name. Giving you an example of about this, in Ribeirinha, on Terceira Island, we have a very unique family name, which is not unique, it's very common, which is Parreira, P-A-R-R-E-I-R-A. And they, at some point, came a priest with a different, that was not very familiar with the individual in the names in the village, and he recorded it as Pereira, P-E-R-E-I-R-A. So sometimes when people are recording or writing a name, they are not aware of the original family name. This is also applicable to the abbreviations of names. One abbreviation may mean one name in one place and another name in another place. So you have to follow the documents and be aware that sometimes you can have a different name. You can find a different name. It's also applicable to the not original records that you use to do research. Many villages, when the priests occupied the place of priests in the village, they found church records in very poor conditions. And they were concerned enough to copy all the records they had found in poor condition. And so they would preserve the information provided by the original documents. But we are humans, and as humans, they made mistakes, reading names, first names, or family names. But we are grateful because they were able to care enough to preserve the information, even with mistakes, but they preserved the way they could. And we may not forget that they didn't have a lot of physical conditions to live and to work. I wouldn't imagine how was I would say the office of a priest in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. There was no electricity, no writing material. They made their own inks. They wrote with a pen. They had sand to absorb the extra ink that sometimes drops from the pen, the feather. So it was not a very easy life. So sometimes we complain, but we have to be more patient and understand how things existed in those days. Some people are also concerned why there were not records from the 1400s. We don't even have documents from the 1400s. For example, at the archives in Angra, there's only one document from the late 1400s. So because people were not concerned with preserving information, and also the conditions of living, they were very hard. There was no proper housing, no storage areas. So they did what they could with what they had. In the 1500s, the conditions of life became a little bit better, and they were able to produce more information. So we have to understand that. And besides, in terms of genealogy research, the church records began with the Council of Trent, which was the 1530s, 1540s. That's why the oldest documents we have, it's from 1541 in Matriz, Ribeira Grande. San Miguel, this village. So this is the village that has the oldest documents in the Azores. So they were able to keep the documents from early time. Other smaller islands, they don't have enough information because they suffered from natural disasters, which is floods, fires, earthquakes, humidity in the village, or they were raids by pirates. Pirates would invade the smaller islands frequently, searching for supplies, food, water. And I read once in the document, for example, in Flores Island, they took over the island, and the first thing they did, they set fire to all the churches on the island. So if they set fire to the church, everything is burned down, including the documents. So that's why we don't have a lot of information about the individuals. And this is what I had to share with you. I'm hoping to questions you may have and to clarify the doubts you may have on this issue.
Thank you, Joao. And we do have quite a few questions. So, and I may mix up the chronology of the questions a little bit and kind of group things together, but we'll start with an easy one. One of our viewers wants to know what version